esteemed guests, and our distinguished speakers. On behalf of His Excellency, Dr. Sultan Al-Naimi, I'd like to welcome you all to the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, and to our discussion panel for today, titled The UAE Real Estate Sector's Path Towards Net Zero. I'm Hanan Al-Badi, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before introducing our speakers, allow me to give a brief introduction on why it's important to shed the light on the impact of the real estate sector on our environment. According to the UN Environmental Programme, the real estate sector has one of the highest carbon footprints, and it accounts for around 30% of the world's annual greenhouse gas emissions. On top of that, it consumes nearly 40% of the world's energy. But the real estate sector, and I think our panelists agree with me, like any other sectors, seek to reduce its carbon footprint to ensure the responsibility of buildings and cities of the future. Today, we gather here to unravel strategies and innovations driving that change and explore how the UAE is navigating this path towards net zero, particularly with insights from our esteemed speakers at Aldar Properties. We have Mr. Adel Al-Breki, Chief Executive Officer of Aldar Project, which manages the execution of Aldar's development projects. Ms. Salwa Al-Maflihi, Group Director and Sustainability and CSR at Aldar, who oversees Aldar's group's wide sustainability and customer service representative strategy. And I think I speak for all our audience when I say we're very delighted to have such a young person representing the youth voices here. We are honored to have Ghaya Al-Mahiri, a student in Aldar Academies. I'm sure each one of our speakers bring wealth of experience and expertise to our discussion, but allow me to start with Mr. Adel. As I've mentioned previously, Mr. Adel, the sector is contributing heavily to the rise of the climate change problem. At the same time, the real estate sector is growing. What can you tell us about this growth and its impact on our environment, and maybe shed the light on the responsibility the sector has towards decarbonization?
Bismillah ar-Rahman. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invite, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like just to give a brief, as you rightly have said. The real estate industry, unfortunately, even though it contributes a lot to the beautifying of cities and countries, and also plays a role in the progressive nature of the economy and the social aspects of any city and any country. And any city and country also prides itself with the structures and monumental buildings. But the sad part of this beautiful story is that, as you said, it contributes a lot to carbon emissions. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, contributors to carbon emissions. And unfortunately, the industry neglected that matter for a very long time. And thanks for the activists in this arena, where they've spread the right awareness and the right set of questions to be asked to the industry leaders to do something about this matter. And as I've seen how the industry evolved in the past 10 years, and I compare how the industry leaders saw sustainability and the environmental impact in the real estate sector versus, just looking at the bottom line. I see a big evolution in the thinking and the doctrine and the way the real estate companies operate. Nowadays, we see a lot of companies looking into this matter seriously. For example, from our side, at least, we revolutionized our procurement strategy. So we partner with the best in class. We take into consideration a lot of aspects during the design stage, even with during tendering and when we procure the contractors in place. We tend to try and put the right methodologies in place in order for us to ensure that the least harm that is being done to our planet. It's part of our responsibility as humans and as corporates to ensure that no more harm happens to our planet.
Thank you, Mr. Adel. I couldn't agree more with you. And I was actually impressed while getting my research done on Aldar. I've noticed that you had a net zero target plan that is aiming to get into net zero emissions across all operations by 2050, which aligns perfectly actually with the net zero strategy of the UAE by 2050. Ms. Salwa, if you allow me, can you elaborate more on that commitment that Aldar is making towards net zero?
Thank you, Hanan, and good morning, everyone, Your Excellency and distinguished guests. We're happy to be here to talk about the sector and the importance of the sector embedding sustainability practices. So going back to your question on Aldar's Net Zero Action Plan, we've launched this plan earlier this year in alignment with Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, where the whole country and authorities are focused towards that direction. And our Net Zero Action Plan is unique in terms of the depth and breadth of it. We've benchmarked against global leaders, and we noticed that it's very rare to see a company in real estate sector that considers the full life cycle of the assets. So our plan has focus areas that considers the different steps of the sector, all the way that, like Adel mentioned, from low carbon design to low carbon material to green construction practices on site, clean energy, energy efficiency and resource efficiency, circularity. Tenant engagement is key in this plan, which is not just the residential tenants that we have in the communities, which consists of scope 3 in our targets, which is the hardest to really tackle in the plan, but also the retail tenants, and bring them on board, incentivize them, provide them with the right solutions to come on board. And then also a key lever in our strategy is sustainable acquisitions. So whenever we invest, how do we consider ESG criteria in those decisions? The plan also clearly states so those steps, how are we going to get there, but also the challenges that we're going to face during this implementation, and the enablers, whether it's the technology or the policies, the infrastructure that needs to be in place and able to allow us, the sector, to accelerate the decarbonization. And as an organization, when we made this decision to create a net zero action plan, it was a conscious decision to make because we see the value of it for our assets. The stakeholders around us are getting more conscious, whether it's the customers or the investors. They want the sector to move toward that direction in terms of products or customer experience and journey. We made a conscious decision because we see the financial value of it too. It's not just a cost, it brings efficiency to your operations as a business. And also the regulators are allowing this. The policies are changing. We are seeing Ministry of Climate Change, Ministry of Energy launching their strategies for all sectors, including ours. So we understand that the policy will change and will be enforced soon on everyone. So there's a value for us to be ready way ahead of that, so we can have that also competitive advantage against others in our market. So we've made also a lot of investments in this field as part of our Net Zero Action Plan. We launched a mega retrofit project. You can see the details of it on media. It's published. It includes more than 60 of our assets, and it was a clear, very successful financial model, great returns. We are also going to soon launch and announce a solar PV investment that we're doing for 50 plus of our portfolio assets. Again, that's a very successful, great financial model with the partners that we're working with, and we'll talk more about it when we announce it officially. Another key investment we're doing that is relevant to net zero is, and we will launch it inshallah in COP, is a mega investment in waste and the circularity of waste. So how do we tackle all the waste that comes from our portfolio, obviously with stages. So we'll start with pilot in assets within Yas Island, and treating all that domestic waste, engaging the community, bringing technology applications that can allow us to monitor data to create a baseline to, and then treating that waste, recycling it into end products that hopefully priority is to recycle it within our operations, but if it's not viable, then we pass it on to third parties for their benefit and use. So it's a long journey for us. We realize it's not easy to achieve, but we care a lot about partnering and collaboration in our net zero plan with the authorities, with the investors, and service providers, and the communities.
Thank you, Ms. Salwa. It's very clear the commitment Aldar Properties has towards this path. And you've mentioned community several times and ESGs. And I'd like actually to get back to you to talk about the social component of the ESGs. But first, let's transition to Ghaya and hear from her. Ghaya, I've heard that you've took part in breaking 2 world records. I'd like to hear more about that and about the world's largest lesson on climate change that you've took part of, I think.
So first, hello everyone, my name is Ghaya and I am a student at Al Ma'amura Academy, and I'm a year 10 student working as assistant head girl. Regarding the trip we went to a week ago, it took place in the Adna grounds, and all the Aldar schools went to that trip, and we were placed in a big room and we were distributed to tables, and each school had to listen to an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, in which we had to break the record for the world's largest lesson. And we collaborated with Climate Fresk, and they were in charge of giving us the introduction. And so there was a representative from the people from Climate Fresk, and they introduced to us what sustainability is, and they introduced to us how to play a game. And this game took to the second part of the lesson, which we had to play a card game, and it was about the effect and cause of climate changes around the world. And it was a really fun game, which we learned a lot from. And in conclusion, we did a quiz about the global problems we face around the world. And we learned that China distributes the most carbon dioxide in the world. So that's an interesting fact. And it was a really fun, very fun experience. We were 1,117 students, and we broke the record for the largest lesson. We also broke the record for the most nationalities in a lesson, which was 57.
That's amazing. We're glad that we have someone who attended that experience. And I think what's important about that is seeing the shift the world is trying to make, especially towards youth, and engaging them and raising awareness in this matter. And speaking of changes, Mr. Adel, I'd like to come back to you. As a business leader, what can you say about the changes that you have seen in recent years regarding sustainability and climate action, and how do you think things might change in the coming years or in the future?
We see the changes. We see the changes as we speak right now. I mean, having Ghaya here in the panel, being very aware about sustainability and the environmental impacts of several industries. That gives us huge hope, honestly. And I salute you for inviting Ghaya as a speaker of the younger generation, who demonstrates, of course, a lot of awareness in this field. I see the changes in the industry as from our perspective at least, decarbonization has become part of our doctrine. So elaborating on my previous point, we don't take it as a flashy word in a flashy sentence. No, we really act upon it. And as my esteemed colleague Salwa also stated earlier, it is becoming part of our modus operandi on a daily basis. We live, we breathe, and we think always about decarbonization. The way we tackle this, of course, on a more tactical level, is that we try to always partner with the right people who can achieve the highest decarbonization numbers for us. From a consultant, by choosing the right partner to design. So it starts with design, it starts with the brief, it starts with what we want as a developer. And at the end of the day, as a developer, we are always the mediator between the industry and the end user, or the contractors and the end user. And now, as we see and how we've seen the market has evolved and the customer sophistication level has increased so much that now the customers are asking for such things for various different reasons, of course. Lower operating costs, more resilient communities, healthier environments, and so on and so forth. So there are the answer of the question as to why we are doing this is fully answered now, and we have no excuse for us not to act upon it. Therefore, we went ahead and we revolutionized our approach to the industry as a whole, and even with our choice of contractors, we dictate to the nth degree as to how they operate and how they construct, and we encourage contractors nowadays to adopt new methods of construction. Of course, there are the limitations of new methodologies, whether it's regulatory or whether it's, of course, contractors' ability to execute based on that. But I think it's an evolving matter. We are working closely with our supply chain to achieve that, and we've seen a lot of progress in that. Internally, we also monitor our carbon emissions, and we rate our contractors and our consultants based on that. So I think the change is there, change is coming. We've seen significant progress towards this change, and we believe things will get better soon.
Mr. Adil, you mentioned opportunities, goals, and aims of Aldar's properties. But I believe throughout our research on climate change, we've noticed that there's so many challenges facing so many sectors around the world. When it comes to the real estate sector, what are the challenges that you can see coming in the future, and how does Aldar plan on addressing these challenges?
Very interesting question. It's mainly the limitations with the supply chain today. I think the supply chain is not very well equipped for it. If we look at it and candidly talk about construction is basically a low margin business, highly intensive, labor intensive, and very, very high risk. That leaves no room for contractors to do any R&Ds in any arena, whether it's sustainability or new methods of construction. That's why I think it's upon us as developers to help and incentivize the contractors and the supply chain to progress in that arena. And we are doing that. So we encourage our supply chain to decarbonize as much as they can, whether it's in choice of material, whether it's methods of construction, and even the way we go about it is not always, on a commercial basis, pure commercial basis, but also we do give incentive on a technical basis where they can give us that the assurity that they will be able to construct in such a way where it is less harmful for the environment. But most importantly also, the shareholders today are asking us to be more aware of this matter. I think another limitation here is innovation. We don't see enough innovation in materials choices. They are still limited. Also in design, there's limitations in design innovation. And of course, last but not least, is the retrofitting of our existing old buildings. So old buildings today, as we call them in the industry, they are brown. So converting them to green is also an issue with the tenants, and an issue also because it is very difficult for them to leave or for different various reasons. But we are trying to push that agenda in order for us to turn as much brown buildings that we have to green.
Thank you, Mr. Adel. I appreciate you expanding on that topic. I like how Aldar is actually admitting into their responsibility in achieving the net zero and working towards that path. Another thing I've noticed through browsing the Aldar's website is setting inclusion and diversity as a priority. And I come back to Ms. Salwa on this. Along with actually empowering all members of community, which connects to the social component I was meaning to ask you to expand on. Regarding the ESGs, how is Aldar integrating that component into its support to local communities and our local communities in particular? And it would be great if you could shed the light on the successful sustainability and community outreach initiatives Aldar has done to involve youth and inspire them, such as Ghaya.
So, I leave Ghaya to the end, the cherry at the top, but for sure, the S part, we talked about governance and environment, but when it comes to the social part and our sustainability agenda, it's a very important pillar. It starts all the way from our people, which is at the heart of it, our employees, making sure that we have a safe, inclusive, healthy environment and workplace that fosters innovation and attracting the right talent, retaining them, and developing them further. But then it's not just our employees, it's the extended, what we like to call family, which is the workforce. We have a total of almost 80,000 of workers that varies from construction, that Aldar referenced, our construction business, to our facility management. So making sure that our worker welfare policy that we have addresses their dignity, their safety, and the healthy environment for them. But then it's about also our core business, making sure that what we do as a company and as a business addresses the well-being of the communities, making sure that our design, our operations provides a healthy and safe environment, products, experiences to the people and who work or live in our communities. And a very core component is the community outreach or the CSR programs that we have in our CSR strategy. That is very close to us as an organization. We started way earlier investing in this, in terms of programs that brings a lasting positive impact to the communities around us. It focuses around 3 key pillars: live, belong, and sustain. We know that we, like Adil said earlier, we are a diverse organization. We have a portfolio. It's not just the development, it's the portfolio that we have in terms of schools, malls, communities. So making sure that these assets are available for the right partners, third sector that we work closely with, investing with them to create those programs that can provide a positive impact around us. I'll highlight a few. You wanted to hear more about them. So, for example, it's the 2nd year now of a program called Thrive with our Aldar education business, where we invested in providing high quality education to students or kids that come from a challenged income background. What was key for us is that that program included students from people of determination. So making sure that they have access to high quality education too. A great impact that came out of this program is that when we had the kids who had different challenges, including a blind kid, a small kid who is, I think, 5-6 years old, that was the first case we have in one of our schools. It was not just the kid benefiting from the education, but the culture in the schools where we had people of determination kids massively transformed the culture and the environment of the school to be more accessible but more positive. We also invested with the Council of Rural Development under Sheikh Diab to develop certain destinations within each emirate, and not just monetary cash, but also providing value in kind. So the expertise that we have to help in the revamping the infrastructure or retail services in these destinations. And you can see it in social media. So there's a village called Gitfa fi Lefjera. That was the first project that they have announced. We partnered as Aldar in also providing expertise on the retail strip that they have there, the extra facilities that they want to have in that village, and hopefully soon volunteering opportunities. A key topic for us when it comes to community outreach is people of determination that I mentioned earlier. It's a legacy that started with 2019 when UAE hosted the UAE Special Olympics, the World Games Special Olympics, and since then it opened our eyes to the importance and the value when you focus on making sure you have inclusive communities and workplace and services for people of determination, which we know that the government is very keen on. So since then, we've been looking at inwards and what do we do as an organization? Not just in terms of facilities, but hatta we're making sure that we are ready as a workplace. So we created programs with the right entities to train our departments on how to become more inclusive. I'll give specific examples. It was as an outcome of that program, our departments and our people, employees, came back to us themselves with a self-led initiative where, for example, HR decided that they want to introduce a mandatory training for all employees on how to work with and address the needs of people of determination. Our retail team in Yasmol specifically, they decided that they actually worked with one of the people of determination interns to audit Yasmol and address the gaps and find out the gaps and address them to make sure that the mall is more accessible and has also activations that supports people of determination. Our IT team came back and said, we want to make sure every new employees join ahead of joining, we want to know if they have any special requirements for IT facilities or equipments that we can make sure that they're ready before them joining. So it's all about making sure that you partner with the right entity to bring their expertise and enhance and elevate your policies, your culture, knowledge to make sure that it serves the right topic that you want to focus on. You asked me about youth. So, like Adil said, we have a great example here, Ghaya. We're very proud of her personality, knowledge, and all the other kids. Every time we visit our schools, we can see the impact of the efforts that they're doing to embed sustainability within the curriculum and practices in our schools, because the power of bringing the right knowledge, instilling the right values and critical thinking in the education service in our schools is key to empower the students to become the advocates for positive change in the future. And that's what we focus on in Aldar. We have the power to do that through Aldar Education, who manages up to 30,000 students and up to 20 schools so far, with future expansion into further schools that we're going to own or manage an extra number of students. So we have a huge platform, and through it we can have multiple numbers of Ghaya in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Salwa. I think Aldar is playing an important role, and it's serving actually as a role model for other groups to follow, and inclusivity particularly. And I've also seen the accessible menu on the website, which actually was impressive. Speaking of youth inspiration, I agree with you. Ghaya serves a very good example. And I would actually like you to talk about the world's best application. I've heard about that. And what are you doing as a school to commit to environmental action?
The World's Best School Prize has many headings. There is a Best Community, Best Environmental Action. So we applied for the Best Environmental Action prize, and we listed as one of the top 3 schools for environmental action, which I think is very impressive and shows us how much we can achieve. But the thing that made us apply to this prize is our commitment to sustainability before we have seen the prizes. So the thing that drove us to apply for that prize was the aeroponic gardens. And if you're not familiar with this phrase, the aeroponic gardens is another way to grow plants in a more sustainable way. So we had aeroponic gardens by Madar Farms, and they provided us aeroponic gardens around the school, which we learned to grow plants in. We've grown tomatoes and basil and lettuce, and we've used it in our cooking classes, which is, I think, is very nice, and it teaches us a new way to the future to plant new things. So this thing showed us how much we can achieve with sustainability, and so it drove us to apply to this award. And we received news that we were the top 10 for environmental action in June in the year of 2022 to 23. And we celebrated that in Warner Brothers, and we had speeches and competitions to celebrate that. And in late September this year, we received that we were one of the top 3 schools, which I think is really nice and impressive. And one of our things and commitments to climate and sustainability and that action is that we go to many fairs. So we went to the ADNEC fair last year for the World Energy Summit fair, and we represented Aldar's booth, and we taught many people around that area about climate change and net zero, which is a project that has 0 carbon emissions in the future. So we learned a lot by that. We also have projects around the school, which For example, we have the Pilot Up Challenge and Simply Bottles. Basically, they are big stations around the school where students can throw recyclable materials such as bottles inside these stations, and they are recycled. And this has helped us also with the application to the World's Best School Prize. So it was a really nice experience. It also includes many students into doing these activities. It is not hard to do them because all you need to do is recycle your bottle you are drinking. So it's a really nice way to include students. We also have Mamora Talks, and we have this every year. So the English classes and drama classes teaches us how to give quotes on worldly problems, such as climate change. So we work on our speeches in English, and we work on how we should represent these speeches in drama. And then we have a competition for each year group, and the winner of each year group will represent their year group in an assembly to talk about these global goals. So it teaches the youth how to become better in the future, and how to present their ideas and deliver their messages in the future.
Thank you, Ghaya. I think it's a well-deserved title after all these initiatives. Before closing this discussion and opening the floor to questions from the audience, I'd like to come to you, back to you, Mr. Talal, to shed light on the importance of this discussion today. One question that I have is, why do you think, from a business perspective, of course, sustainability is important? Just like a brief outlook on that.
Sustainability and decarbonization, in my opinion, is the new disruptor, industry disruptor. Whoever doesn't take that path will be left behind. I think it's just going to be as important as the internet or being digitally acquainted or literate. So if for those companies that do not adopt that vision and doctrine in their vision or objectives, I think they'll be definitely be left behind. So it is very imperative for all these companies to adopt this doctrine in their modus operandi going forward. Otherwise, they'll just be losing. They'll be losing customers, they'll be losing shareholders, they'll be losing value.
Thank you, Mr. Talal. Our speakers, I'd like to thank you today. Unfortunately, we're limited by a time frame, but I'd like to thank you for sharing your very valuable insights today. And I think this discussion has been enlightening for me and for our audience. Before we conclude, we'll open the floor to our audience. If you have any question, please raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you so much for the distinguished panel for this insightful and constructive discussion. My question to Ms. Salwa, you've mentioned that the policy of achieving net zero carbon policy have helped you in achieving efficiency in your operations. Could you elaborate more, and in what way have helped you? Thank you.
So the Net Zero Action Plan, when we developed it, we realized and formalized the steps that we'll need to take to decarbonize our operations. So one of the key levers in our Net Zero Action Plan is resource efficiency or energy efficiency. That means what Adil mentioned earlier is retrofitting is one of the steps. The action states what are the steps and the investments that we need to do to decarbonize in our business. So retrofitting is one example, which is a financial investment that you need to do to enhance your existing portfolio practices and operations, whether it's the energy or the cooling, water consumption. But that exercise brought in efficiency in terms of operation cost for our business. It was a financial investment we've done, but the return of investment financially was one of the best things we've ever done as a business compared to all other investments that we've been doing. it was a quick win in the investment committee presentation. So that, for example, brought in 20% the target of energy consumption reduction, and basically to our bills too. So that's one example that clearly demonstrates the value and the benefit of investing in sustainability into your operations. And that's not just Aldar. We know, talking to the authorities, that this is now the direction that the government is going for all the existing portfolio of assets, not just in Abu Dhabi, but across UAE, because there is a clear, value of it operationally.
Mr. Adel, Ms. Salwa, and my daughter Gaia, first of all, I would like to thank you so much for this fruitful lecture. And as we can see that climate action and climate change is very important all over the world. That's why, because we are a think tank center, we're tackling this issue. That's why we come like a COP28 climate action supporter. So we'll be there in the COP28, and that's why we have already started to do that action to tackling this issue, conducting many lectures. And I think this lecture, I could say it is a unique, because we usually talking about geostrategic and economy or something like this, but now we are trying to engage the real estate, we try to engage the private sector. So we'd like to thank you to being here. Yes, there is an initiative, as you mentioned, Ms. Salwa, and I think that Aldar will thinking about the upcoming projects to be aligned with the climate action decarbonization. But one of the challenges that you mentioned, Mr. Adel, the old building, which is I'm not sure what we could do with that to reduce the climate change or the problem of it. If we could not do something with the old buildings, from your point of view, from Aldar, there is any initiatives that around this old buildings that you could do something, Mr. Adels? Because the new project, as we can see now, and Aldar, they're focusing the green, a lot of things there. So what about the previous projects that you still run it? Do you have any initiatives for that?
First of all, thank you, Your Excellency, for the invitation to begin with. Towards your question, I think the way to tackle this is more regulatory rather than as a private sector. So the way they're tackling this in Europe, for example, is that I think they have a set date of 2030 where even the old buildings, or the brown buildings as we call them, they need to be converted to green. And there are set things that the landlords need to do in order for them to change them. So, and there are categories. So there's a category A, B, C, D, and then all the way to F, which is the lowest. And I think the minimum threshold by 2030 is for them to reach a B grade. And there are very clear-cut set policies and procedures that the landlords need to take in place in order for them to convert these buildings. And then, of course, for those who are not obliging with that, I think they'll have a very onerous or disadvantaged clauses in their leases for them to be sort of forced to convert these buildings. At the end of the day, I think also raising awareness is very important for the landlord, and to answer the question of why they should do this and convert these buildings from brown to green. Once they understand this, I think that will be very clear for them in order for them to expedite this initiative. So it starts with regulation, Your Excellency, and I think then the private sector will follow.
Thank you. I think we have a question there.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you very much for your speech. It seems that you are very knowledgeable, mashallah, and I wish this speech was in Arabic, as most of us are Arabic. But anyway, I have a question regarding the cost effective. Actually, when it comes to the cost, I won't say most, but many people, if you compare between cost and environment and these, things, they go for the cost rather than going for the environment. So regarding this issue, how do you encourage people to build, and apply sustainability and all these things,
So I think it's a very important point because nothing comes without costs. I agree. So what we've been doing as in Aldar in our operations in the new developments, I think for the last year or year and a half, we've been testing in a couple of our projects to see how much extra cost do we need to have in order to bring in more efficient materials, for example, in new developments. We've been testing that specifically in Noya and lagoons. We don't have the final number. We're still finalizing this and validating it with our procurement team, because also the advantage is we started doing this exercise when those two projects were just on paper, design, but they're actually now in construction. So it's good that we have the actual materials that were used, so we can validate those estimations of extra costs that we need to incur in those pilot projects, for example. So for massive developers like Aldar, it's on materials only. It's a percentage of 5%, maximum 10%, maximum, but way less also, which brings in, is what's important is when you need to demonstrate, we need to demonstrate to ourselves and to the partners the financial returns and operation efficiency that you mentioned on the long term. So you invest 5 and 10% now, but the operational cost that will be reduced on the long term when people are living in these units, and especially that we know, and the government is looking at the price of the energy to individuals across UAE, including Abu Dhabi, that we know that it's much cheaper than other Emirates, but eventually this might change in the future. So explaining that operation efficiency it will bring on the long term is important to explain and demonstrate to the end users. And piloting innovative solutions. I think Adil mentioned earlier the challenge. So we know that the market is not yet fully ready for this. The products are not there. That's why they're higher in costs. So you want to embed them, they cost you more, but if they're produced at a massive scale, and if the demand is there from us and other developers, then that cost will eventually become much less in the future. And I think this will happen because the policies are going to change in the future. It might cost more now, but I think in the future, the availability of the products, the enforcement through the policy that will force everyone to move toward that direction, whether developers or other sectors, will bring in better efficiency and cost efficiency to the products out there. But also piloting is key at this stage for us to test different solutions on energy or water consumption in our products. Adil, you want to add more to this?
Yeah, so one thing also we've done is that we've established something called strategic procurement, where we capitalize on the volume of purchasing power that we have and the volume that we are developing with. So once you do that, you can get a better pricing from suppliers, and you can dictate also the type of material that you can choose. Having said that, yes, you might be paying a little bit extra, or by capitalizing on the volumes, you'll be getting at the same price as something that you'll be buying individually. But then, most importantly, is that you are giving a better value to the buyer. So we are, just to demonstrate that we are value-driven rather than cost-driven. And that's what gives the better value for the customers. As I said earlier, today the customer level of satisfaction is very high, competition is very, very high as well, and therefore you need to differentiate yourself in front of your customers and give them a better value, not just by looking at pure cost. And that's what differentiates you from your competitors.
Thank you. And I agree. I think with the increasing demands and regulations put in place, the cost will become more efficient for customers. I'm sorry, we have another question.
Hello. First of all, thank you, everyone. It was such an interesting lecture. My question is to Mr. Adel Breiki. Along your journey to make Aldar more green, have you ever been in a situation where you had to let go some of your trusty partners? And if yes, what other collateral damage or collateral challenges that you had to go through along your journey to that commitment, especially that, as you and also Ms. Salwa Al-Miflihi said, that the supply chain is still not ready or not equipped enough to provide green options?
Sorry, you said let go of what exactly?
Partners.
Okay. No, we've, because our selection process is very stringent. So we are, I wouldn't say picky, but we are stringent in selecting our partners. And therefore, once we make that decision, and the decision is not always based on pure commercial basis, but also about with regards to the technical background and technical capabilities. And we really scrutinize our supply chain before we endeavor into them. So whenever we go out on a tender and select the bidders, or as we like to call them as partners, we really scrutinize their capabilities. We look at how adaptive they are towards our criterias, and their capabilities, financial and technical, and how much of attuned they are in executing the works the way that we want them to work. So we do have internally, for example, a dedicated QHSE, which is not only health and safety, but also environmental, that they look into. And these guys are always roaming around all the sites, ensuring that all sites are environmentally friendly, and all the sequence of construction is done in an environmentally friendly way. We also have a database or a data lake that collects all of the data. So we monitor all of the carbon emission materials, or the way of the sequence of construction that is being taking place, in order for us also to establish a database for that. And these data gives us a better decision-making process in the future.
And it's also important to know we work with them to fill any gaps. So assessing any specific gaps that or needs that they need to focus on going forward, whether it's the environmental practices that they have, or the worker welfare practices they have with their laborers in construction sites. So it's not just the E, it's also the S. So we clearly define the needs of improvements that they need to have that are not red flags, but then monitor how do they progress on these practices across the operations of the project.
Thank you. I think Mr. Abdurrahman has a question. Just a minute.
Well, I think today all of us are fascinated by the level of maturity that Ghaya represented today, and I think she's a bright example that could perhaps be an inspiring idol for our new generations. So, Ghaya, could you tell us, or let's say, can you send a message to the new generation so they can be thriving in the future and save their country as you? Thank you.
I think a message to give to the younger students or the youth is to definitely patience. I think because I'm in a British curriculum school, and I think it's something new for most Emiratis because usually everyone goes for American. So I am having a new experience with this. I'm trying to experiment new things and learn new things. So I think a message to the younger students could be that achievements take time, and your work that is unnoticed will be noticed soon. And I think patience is key. And we know this by our religion, by our culture, and by so many things. So I think patience, and I think every great thing takes time. So yeah, you should hold on to your patience and your achievements.
Thank you, Ghaya. I think this concludes our discussion perfectly. Thank you for addressing that message. I hope that this discussion inspires further progress towards a sustainable and net zero future for the UAE and the globe as a whole. And once again, thank you for your participation, and I hope you all have a great day today. Thank you.